Hello and welcome. I'm Brandon Weichert, and this is The Absolute Truth with Emerald Robinson. Emerald is on vacation this week. I'll be filling in. We start with Capitol Hill, where we have our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Allison Steinberg, is with us. It's so great to see you. She's going to fill us in on the recent press conference that just happened and some interesting news with the big, beautiful bill that just made its way through the Senate. Allison, why don't you fill us in, please?
Hey, Brandon, great to see you too. Yes, it's been a very busy day here on the Hill. So much going on. As you just mentioned, the press briefing actually just wrapped up. Caroline Leavitt touched on quite a few subjects today, really opening with the fact that we came off of an amazing win of a week last week with the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Of course, the president traveled to the Netherlands and got our NATO allies to commit to 5% of their GDPs to military spending. There was also a funny moment when she had a letter there from President Trump. If we have that, we can pull that up on the screen from Jerome Powell. President Trump said to Jerome Powell, quote, "Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost. No inflation." So President Trump is still after Jerome Powell, trying to make his point known. He's got to lower the rates. Of course, this also ties in with everything pertaining to the big, beautiful bill, which, fiscal conservatives are concerned this is going to add to the deficit. But Caroline Leavitt is standing firm on the fact that this is, going to fulfill President Trump's campaign promise to restore the largest tax cuts in history, continuing on with the 2017 tax cuts that are set to expire very soon. We have to pass this bill to keep those in place, as well as further border security and unleashing American energy. So let's take a listen to this clip from Caroline Leavitt on why the big, beautiful bill is so important and must be passed as it sits here in the Senate currently.
This is one of the most fiscally conservative pieces of legislation that has ever made its way through Capitol Hill. There's $2 trillion in mandatory savings in this bill. And not only that, the projected growth that this bill will bring to our economy. It will be an economic boom. The Council of Economic Advisors has an analysis that shows that the bill will generate $4.1 trillion in economic growth, and it will cut taxes, putting more money back into the American people's pockets. That's why this president wants this bill to pass, and I know he's busy working the phones and doing what he needs to do today to make it happen.
So they're really, really driving home the point here on the big, beautiful bill of President Trump trying to rally everyone up to get this passed, as I said. And you mentioned it is currently in the Senate, and they're in a vote-a-rama right now, meaning that they passed the ability to be able to vote for the bill. Now they are going over all of these amendments, making a number of various changes before this eventually and hopefully gets passed back to the House. And they had the July 4th deadline. We'll see if that actually happens. Lots of changes being made currently, Brandon.
So I understood that you spoke recently with the senator about the big, beautiful bill. Is there any news that you can bring us? Maybe some inside information? I remember those days. I worked on the Hill. I remember the budget bill. I remember voting and all of that and having to crunch before the deadline. So is there any interesting things you gleaned from your conversations with this individual?
Well, Senator Kevin Cramer was so kind to donate some of his time to us in between voting today. He came out and met us in front of the Capitol, and we did have a great conversation. He seems very hopeful that this bill is going to make its way back to the House in a timely manner. He seems to be hopeful that it isn't going to change a ton. He did mention changes regarding the SALT provisions, which has been a big topic of discussion. Also, Medicaid, another major topic of discussion. It was mentioned actually today in the briefing that Democrats are sort of running away with this narrative that Medicaid is going to be totally cut for everyone. And, their livelihood is going to be at stake. They're no longer going to have access to health care. But Senator Kevin Cramer, as well as Caroline Leavitt today, really re-emphasized the point that that is not actually the case. Medicaid is still going to be available. It ensures that able-bodied Americans who have the ability to work up to 20 hours a week will do so. It's actually going to strengthen the program for those that need it. And most importantly, it's going to rid the 24 million aliens who are receiving Medicaid from that program entirely, therefore opening up and giving more access to the people who truly do need it. So again, Democrats are trying to say that the Medicaid cuts are going to wipe away coverage for people in need. No, that's not the case. It's just going to revise and refine who can get it and then making it more accessible to those in need. So I think that's good. Definitely a topic to be aware of, because you're going to hear a lot of mixed commentary on that. Senator Kevin Cramer also touched on this AI provision, which I find very interesting and have been raising a lot of red flags about, because historically Republicans have been largely against big bills, and I think that is exemplified in this situation with the AI provision. The AI provision is basically unregulated AI in all 50 states for the next 10 years. Now, the senator did mention today to me that it's sounding like that provision is undergoing a change. It's now going to be 5 years unregulated AI instead of 10 years, which I don't know, is that a win? You look 5 years down the road, that's 2030. Think about Agenda 2030. That's when they want to enact the whole digital surveillance state. So is that ultimately kicking the can down the road and still ushering in the New World Order? I don't know. But he seems equally concerned about that too, and did express some issues that he has with an impending digital prison.
Well, and it's not only him. There are many Republicans in the House, Marjorie Taylor Greene and several others, who are steadfast Trump loyalists who are expressing doubts about this. Something that I was told by a colleague of mine is that the provision was specifically aimed at California. They want to prevent California from regulating AI development because so much of the AI industry is still in Silicon Valley. Doesn't make me feel any better. So it is interesting to see 5 years or 10 years, either way you look at it, it is a digital panopticon we could be building for ourselves. So Allison, so it definitely does seem like there's still some bitter poison pills in here. But in your assessment, you're there on the ground. Do you think this is going to make it through? Do you think the president's going to get his bill passed, or is there going to be some kind of 11th hour pushback? We already see Schumer and these guys, hitting the Republicans on some of the claims in the bill. What do you hear since you're on the ground?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brandon. And, I tend to think that there is going to be some delay. Like I said, Senator Kevin Cramer seems hopeful that this is going to get passed through and actually go forward onto the president's desk by the July 4th deadline that we've heard so much about. I tend to lean a little bit more on the negative or perhaps more realistic end of things, knowing that a lot of these, people here running the show are in no hurry to get anything done. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I know the pressure is certainly on President Trump, and Caroline Leavitt, as we heard in the briefing today, are really encouraging Republicans to do their job and come together on this issue. So, and then too, you have President Trump sort of I don't want to say threatening, but reminding people that they could potentially be primaried or not be reelected if they don't go along with this. So there is a lot at stake here. We are all eagerly awaiting to see what happens. And I guess we won't really know much until July 4th. We'll see what happens, Brandon.
One other question I have, that we saw the collapse of Senator Thom Tillis from South Carolina. It looks like he won't be running now because of the for re-election, because of the pushback from the Trump White House. We know Senator Rand Paul is putting up a fight because he's worried about the spending in the bill. We know in the House, Tom Massey is he's certainly going to be primaried, it looks like. Are there some Republicans who maybe are opposed to this bill, but are seeing the examples of Tillis and Massey and Rand Paul? Do you think that there's some going along to get along because they are worried about the Trump backlash?
I think there could be some of that going on. Certainly, we know Ron Johnson, for example, Senator Ron Johnson was another example. He was very adamantly against this due to the fiscal concerns, adding to the deficit that is already massive, as we know. He said he was a hard no on this issue. Seems like he's changed his tune. He's now a yes on it. So I guess he's learning here, and he's turned around on this one. We also had Marjorie Taylor Greene come forward, and interestingly enough, I was just talking about this with Kara on our live. She was all for the bill until she realized that AI provision that we were just talking about was in there, and then more or less admitted to not having read it, because she said if she knew that was in there, she never would have voted for it. So now she's been very vocal about her concerns with it, though I think, knowing MTG, she'll probably want to stay on Trump's good side and end up voting yes when it comes back to the House.
Well, having worked there for several years, I can tell you they never read the bill. It was always up to guys like me. We were given 24 or 48 hours to read thousands of pages, and we never really we skimmed it. So I can guarantee you they probably didn't read it either. So this is I guess we're going to have to see. He says it's a big, beautiful bill, and certainly there's a lot in there I like, but we're still waiting to hear back on whether it's going to add to the deficit or not officially. I know the CBO says it will, but the president is committed to this, and so it looks like the Republicans will go along, and the Democrats doesn't seem like they have the votes. And in terms of the AI bill, I guess the only question that we would have is, 5 years. Does it really matter at this point? It's still ending in a very bad place, I think, for us. So we'll have to wait and see. Any other news? I mean, you're on the ground. So is there any other news you're hearing today coming out of the D.C. area? Anything that we should be keeping our eyes out on?
Well, the other major topic today that sort of dominated the briefing, and I love this one so much, is President Trump is actually going to be in the Everglades in Florida, right in your home, Brandon, tomorrow.
He'll probably fly over my house.
he just might. Yes, he's going there, of course, because of the alligator Alcatraz that is being unveiled tomorrow by Governor Ron DeSantis, which I think is so awesome. This is a huge event that is basically the grand opening of this facility that is set to house, process, and deport illegal criminal aliens. So just another facility to send them off to, and they will be surrounded by alligators who will bite their heads off if they, have any thoughts of escaping. So President Trump is going there tomorrow to meet with DeSantis to showcase the grand reveal. So that should be very fun.
No AI needed for that. Just a little bit of the old alligator alley will get you. So it is a very. We have a soundbite, I believe.
Yes, we do. We have the soundbite of that. Let's.
Why don't we roll that, Greg? Yep.
I think his trip to this detention facility actually underscores the need to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill, because we need more detention facilities across the country. The last administration let in nearly 20 million illegal people from all over the world, and this administration is focused on arresting and detaining them. But in comparison to that 20 million illegal criminal population in our country, we only have 7,000 ICE agents in the interior who are doing this very important work. And so we obviously need more personnel, we need more resources, and that's why we need to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill.
There you go. It all ties back to the BBB, doesn't it?
It is. It does. Well, I can tell you right now, they are lined up protesting this alligator prison, but of course, in the state of Florida, you cannot block traffic; they will run you over. So they're being very, very disciplined in terms of their protests. Well, as always, done. That is. If only the rest of the country would emulate our Sunshine State. Well, with that being said, it looks like we have gotten our update on the Big Beautiful Bill, and the AI thing is very worrying, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Thank you so much, Allison, for joining us, our Washington, D.C. correspondent extraordinaire. And we will go to commercial now and come back with Gabby Cuccia, who's going to talk to us about what's going on at the Pentagon, and is there a big shakeup afoot? You don't want to miss out. Stay tuned.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nervanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nervanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nervanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at NirvantaHealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nervanta instead and experience the difference. Go to NirvantaHealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nervanta Health. Live well naturally.
And welcome back to The Absolute Truth with Emerald Robinson. I'm Brandon Weichert, filling in this week for Emerald while she's on much-needed vacation. We are now going to shift over to another story in D.C., keeping it in the nation's capital for this half-hour segment. Gabrielle Cuccia has been a mainstay at Washington, D.C. Just recently, she was the Pentagon correspondent for another network, but she has been tapped in to a lot of the goings-on within that elephantine bureaucracy. And she's also been all over the AutoPen story with the Biden administration. We've had her on previously with Emerald, and we're going to have her on again to talk about a couple things that I'm hearing out of the Pentagon. One of them being that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth may very well be on his way out by this fall as SecDef. Of course, this is all unconfirmed. This is the whisper campaign, but that is what I'm hearing. So, Gabby, it's great to have you here. It's so nice to have you back on board, and good to see you. Why don't you tell us about what's really going on within the Pentagon?
Well, Brandon, great to be with you. Glad to be back with you all on Emerald's Absolute Truth. I can tell you that your ears work because the things that you've been saying, I kind of laugh to myself a little bit and I say, shoot, I'm hearing the same things from sources. And I can caveat that with sources that are both, left leaning and also on the right. There are these whispers happening over at the Pentagon in which Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth will not be there. I can at least confirm, I think most of us can confirm, that he's not going to be there at least for all 4 years. And that's me putting it lightly and fairly, right? Because at the end of the day, if you remember President Trump's very first term, he actually had 2 Secretary of Defenses and then 1 acting in between. Remember, he started with General Mattis, had him for a very short period, and then he had Patrick Shanahan sitting as the acting, and then Mark Esper to finish out the rest of President Trump's first term. So that's, going from high level, just being quite fair, but then going into the weeds of exactly what's going on in the hallways. I have heard from sources saying that they anticipate exactly what you said, that by fall, the Secretary of Defense, currently Pete Hegseth, would be filtering on out. Now, there's questions as to whether or not who would actually be fulfilling that seat next. I've heard whispers of it being some higher level folks being considered that are from the Department of the Army. But I can at least say at a bare minimum, and this was even during Singlegate, Brandon. I mean, you remember everyone was kind of very quick to say, well, he's going to be out the door immediately because of Singlegate. But I would say at that time, especially too, I was giving him just by natural assessment. And again, being in the government for, over 10 years. And Brandon, I know that you have experience as well, certainly in this field. So you know that when there's a laundry list of, say, firings, people just assume and zero in on that because that's supposed to be the breaking news, the bad news, right? And this was coming at the time where Caldwell was seen out the door. Joe Casper has left as the chief of staff. You name it. There's a lot of people on that list. But at the same time, he was hiring. So Hegseth's team has hired the same pace that they've been firing, albeit these are a lot of people that the administration has emboldened Hegseth to bring on in to do, I would say, if we want to go down that whole rabbit hole too, is kind of doing his bidding in the sense that we've had 2 press briefings, of which both of those were announced by President Trump first and foremost. I still am receiving correspondence from the Pentagon. I have yet to see any time that the Pentagon has announced those out of those two briefings that those were relayed by his office, specifically OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense. It's always been by the White House announcing it on first. They've been trying to encourage him to do more of them. And while he's been in office, to kind of get around doing those press briefings, there was at least encouragement if you're not going to do the press briefings, then at a bare minimum, like please do the sit downs with Fox, which we know that he's been doing quite regularly. But at some point, you are kind of allowing, and this is just more of a political perspective, but certainly, I mean, I've lived in the walls, and so I understand their movement in there, is that they're relying more so on, say, the friendlies, or relying more on, I guess I talk about all these hirings. These hirings are coming from people that are specifically part of his digital team. So every Friday they roll out correspondence in which they highlight the things that they've done at the Pentagon in a positive light. Also, if they're doing any of these trips, it's always going to be, they might bring a press pool in, right? Because that's typical for government. But outside of press pool, it's less interaction with them or informal interaction and these preset videotapings with his own team. At some point, especially a lot of conservatives too, it's always about, like what's going on under the veil of all of big government. Right. So even when you're happy with, say a president that you're electing in, we trust that President Trump's going to bring in secretaries, bring in a cabinet that totally and completely, emboldens him, but also falls in line with that America First agenda that we're going to be unrelenting and unafraid of the hard questions and be honest when we may or may not make mistakes. And I would say even in this situation, right, Hegseth, again, was instructed to have this press briefing, of which he appeared very angry when answering any of the questions, to include, right, Franny, I mean, you saw it, whatever you want to say about Jennifer Griffin. I mean, we can talk about that all day, because I do know, I'm not stupid. I'm a MAGA girl. I understand how people, feel that the mainstream media or legacy individuals, say like Jennifer, for example, who's been in the NatSec space for such a long time. But I will give her grace in the sense that pure question, it was the one and only question, focused on uranium. Was uranium, and that was a huge issue for people. Was uranium worth
Still is.
Was a SIGINT?
Still is.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brendan. Yes, right. Exactly. So him responding in that way, I think, has only expedited maybe the concerns of, it appears he's not as comfortable as he should have been, versus I can tell you, Hegseth's team, an individual from Hegseth's team, contacted my former employer to express frustration with my reporting simply during the Signalgate time, of which there was all these questions. Is he going to go immediately after this? Is Hegseth the one on the way out? There was just so much focus on him. And that's when I had said, kind of like what we're talking about now as well, if you want to look at it and play it fair, all these departures and say flubs, well, despite all of those, he's still being allowed to hire. And when you hire, especially somewhere in the Pentagon, same way that it's at the White House, you have to at least have a public trust clearance. That costs money, not on top of the actual salary. So I by no means anticipated that the administration was going to kick him right out if they're going to allow him to keep on hiring. Right now, we're not seeing many more hirings in the moment, which I think coincides with potentially the fall. I was playing it a little bit more safe and giving him until the winter time, which tends to be the trajectory of administrations even prior to this, Obama, Bush.
It could very well, and it could very well still be. And I'll tell you what I keep hearing, and the name I keep hearing, and I don't know, put whatever you want to say about it, but it's Tom Cotton is the name I keep being told is somebody who keeps reaching to the top of that list for potential replacements. We know during Signalgate this was a constant refrain, and if you look at the people that have stuck around Hegseth, Dan and the other two guys were let go. These were people who came up with Hegseth back from the nonprofit days a decade ago. They knew him the best. So he fired his 3 loyalists, and he's surrounded now by neoconservative types. So he's bringing in people still that seem to be in the neoconservative wing. So it seems like they're sort of preparing the battlefield, if you will, for removing him and then putting a true neocon like Senator Tom Cotton in. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but that is the name that I keep hearing from my people since Signalgate. And remember, he wanted the Secretary of Defense job from the beginning. I don't know. Are you hearing this as well, or
Yeah,
is it all the
no,
Army guys? Yeah.
I think that's possible. I can only say on my end, and maybe it's because I'm being physically in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Maybe these are people just telling me these things that they're hopeful that it's going to be someone in the military that they work with right now. But I'm hearing individuals that are still within the walls. But Brandon, I can tell you, and I think this is really important. And I put this in my Substack, and I only say this is not me bashing Hegseth. I want this administration to succeed. I want the Department of Defense more than any other agency, to be honest, any other department,
Right.
especially because it has the largest budget. I want them to do the right things. You look at what happened in the GWAT. We're like battered animals now over any time that we integrate ourselves in a military capacity because we do not want to make the same mistakes. But I will say, when you talk about, okay, who's in his inner circle, the people that you mentioned, say you're Joe Casper, say you're Dan Caldwell, say Darren Selnick, any of these people, I can say I have sources that are very familiar with the matters of their departures and are very close to the Secretary of Defense. And I can tell you, and I put this in my Substack because I think it's important for people to understand, is that who is surrounded in his inner circle, this very defensive mechanism, where I do call him the Secretary of Defensive, is quite literally because his wife, which at first we all thought it was hearsay, we thought it was fake news. His wife is at the Pentagon. She is involved in his meetings, which you can say maybe that there's some issue with that. Tim Parlator, a very well-known lawyer, is in his circle, and Ricky Berea being one of Lloyd Austin's closest confidants. And you might wonder, why is there a dedicated leftist in Hegseth's ear? I can tell you, I've heard on multiple occasions that they continuously, all three of them, keep showing him bad news, keep fueling those worries and sentiments that he can't do the job. And so I'm not putting the full blame on him, but there are other people that are facilitating and fueling this fear. And I hate to see that for the Secretary of Defense.
Absolutely.
Really
Well, Gabby, I can tell you, and I said this to Emerald last week when I was on with her, and I think you were on the same day I was. And basically, I said, I like Pete a lot. I corresponded with him before on hypersonic technology. I'm a fan of his. I supported his bid to be the Secretary of Defense. Having said that, I thought that press conference last week was somewhat embarrassing for a Secretary of Defense. I realize he has bad blood from his previous job with Jennifer Griffin, but what she asked was a very legitimate news story. It's a legitimate question. We just had Colonel Manus on an hour ago with me, and he's of the mind that the strike worked, the U.S. airstrike. But as he said, we won't know for sure about the highly enriched uranium, the HEU. We don't know if they got it out,
right?
Which is the whole thing. So it's a legit question. Doesn't matter who's asking it, and that's their job to ask that question. I think my personal read, and you feel free to comment on this, Hegseth flew to Europe and back last week. Flew to Europe and back last week with Trump to NATO. I think he caught the third degree the whole flight. So I guess we're going to have to see how this is going to go. And Gabby, where can they follow you to keep up with all of your excellent reporting?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You can follow me on X, Gabrielle_Cuccia, or on Instagram, Gabby Loves America. And Brandon, spot on with your assessment, because he wasn't laughing and Marco Rubio was laughing at that daddy question. Right. So I think that just says it all.
I think it does. That's right. Thank you, Gabby. We will see you tomorrow. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Lindell TV. Please stay tuned for our next show. This is a great day to be watching Lindell TV. A lot of breaking news. And be sure to watch us at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Emerald Robinson Show. We're going to be there. Please check it out. Rob Manus, like I said, was going to be there. And also follow us at Lindell TV, at Emerald Robinson, and me at We the Brandon. Thank you so much.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas, These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.